more of an example of what we can think about with building powerful numeracy. Do that. We already did 8 times 59. Oh, I want to show you this first, sorry. So what you just saw me do is a lesson structure called a problem string. A problem string is a string or series of problems that are in a certain order intended to build relationships in the learner's head so that problems become more natural, strategies become more natural to do when they run into those problems without the help of problems. So they're in a certain order so that as we solve them and talk about what we're doing, learners can go, oh, I see how those are connected, and bing, synapses fire, we've made a connection, we have more dense structure in your brain, and we're building powerful numeracy. So a problem string is that series. It's a lesson structure. It's meant to be about 10 to 15 minutes in a class period. You don't necessarily have to do them every day, but it's this string in a certain order. So you'll notice that as you look at those problems that we just did, they're in a certain order, yeah? What, do I just hand them out to kids and say, here, just go do these? I mean, that might take less time. So I mention that now because as people come to a short clip like this in a conference and they go try it, and then they'll email me and they'll say, so I tried it, I'm not really seeing the power come out of it. And I'll say, well, how are you doing it? Well, I wrote them on the board and the students did them all. I'm like, oh, no, don't do that. It has to be one problem at a time, because then as we do each problem, we talk about the connections. And as students talk about what they're thinking, they make connections in their head. Verbalizing stuff helps us sort of cinch stuff and have those synapses fire, and then we become more densely connected. So you have to do them one at a time and talk in between. Model strategies on the board. I didn't do a very good job of modeling those. I'm going to do a better job in our next problem string. The last thing that I want to do before we do another string, which I'm going to do pretty quick, I'm going to do 2 things, and then we'll do a bunch more strings to build your powerful numeracy, is talk about sort of this hierarchy. When I did all that research into numeracy, I sort of synthesized a bunch of stuff from a secondary perspective. A lot of the elementary stuff takes a while to read because they keep talking about counting. So I would tell my secondary cohorts, I'm like, oh, read this, it's really cool, but like start with chapter 7, because the stuff before that didn't really apply to us so much, you know? So as I synthesized all this stuff, it was noteworthy to me that there's this kind of hierarchy of a progression of sophistication, and that we have way too many students that are stuck in the unsophisticated hierarchy. So when kids begin to learn about mathematics, they start with counting. That's a wonderful thing for kids to do when they count. You know that if you're a grandparent or a parent, you love it when they start counting, right? But we've kept kids stuck in counting too long if all they've done is memorize traditional algorithms, because they can solve almost all of those with less sophisticated strategies than we need them to actually be thinking with and using in our math classes in a secondary place. So if they start with counting strategies, that's great, but I don't want to keep them there. So if I were to give you walked into your class on Monday and you said to your students, hey, quick, what's 58 plus 5? If your students go, 58, 59, if they do that, they're using a counting strategy. I don't want students using a counting strategy for 58 plus 5. I want them to use a more sophisticated strategy. And you might think, 58 plus 5, what are you thinking when I say, are you counting by ones?
No, I'm going.
I bet many of you are saying, well, 50, I'm trying to decide if I want to go model, and I think I do, so I'm going to go back here. I bet many of you are saying something like, that over? Can you see that?
Yes.
I bet you're saying, now I put that in the wrong place. If this is 58, I bet a lot of you said, 58 and 2, that's 60. And if I'm adding 5, how much is left? 3 more. And what's 60 and 3? 63. Now, none of you drew a number line in your head, but you're thinking and using those relationships. But if I'm a student without powerful numeracy, and you just say that, that's why I went, Pam, go model it, because I want you to model your thinking. It's putting it on paper that built my numeracy. It's me being able to see what you were doing. You nifty mathematical thinker guys, I always would hear what you said and think that you were doing the standard algorithm in your head. I'm like, how do they keep track of those crossy outies and little ones? How do they do that? And you guys weren't doing that. You were using numerical relationships. But I couldn't see what you were doing, and so I just ignored it. Like for most of my life, I ignored it. But when I could start seeing what you were doing in your head, I began to build those relationships, and then I could use them. So I challenge you to begin to model what's going on in your head in some way that your students can go, oh, that's what you're doing? Okay. So again, this is a pretty simple example, but I can do the same kind of thing with 58 plus 35, right? I can say if this is 58, and I'm just going to add that little 2 to get to the 60, what's left over from 35 if I've already added 2? I just have 33 left to add. Well, what's